Well, here we are. Pat McGart in the background and in the foreground, Niall Murphy. Niall is as most of us know, is the Secretary of Ireland's Future. And we're very grateful to you, Niall, for giving us your time today. Um, could I start maybe by asking you, do you see the nomination of a date for a referendum, an All Ireland referendum, as helpful? Sinn Féin have said 2030. Would that be the line you yourself would take, or Ireland's future might take?
Yeah, it is absolutely our sincere belief that the conditions that would uh, compel a Secretary of State to convene a border poll are likely to be achieved by 2030. And I do think that it is constructive to speak in terms of what we, sincerely believe to be the inevitable. It is going to be the democratic expression of its generation, more so
Hmm.
than Brexit. And to that extent, society needs to understand, appreciate, and therefore prepare for what would be the most significant democratic expression, perhaps, of this century.
Most people talking seem to
And
say, sorry, now go
go ahead.
ahead, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. You're fine.
I was going to say, a lot of people talking seem to push that beyond 5 years and talk about 7 years or 10 years. Uh, you feel 5 years is sufficient?
Well, we published a document last year called 2024 to 2030. The document was called Ireland 2030, the roadmap to a border poll. And really, in that published document, which you can find on our website, and I'll send you a PDF for your records, Jude.
Hmm.
We set out who needs to do what by when. And whereas we, you know, consider our utility to the wider debate to convening meetings such as the SSC or the Three Arena or the Ulster Hall to give a physical expression to what has been described as the conversation.
Hmm.
We also publish literature which is imbued by empirical evidence, authored by experts, to put meat on the conversational bones.
Hmm.
But very ultimately, you know, we can't put a refined date. We can't say that it's going to be the 1st of March or the
Hmm.
5th of
Hmm.
May 2030. But the demographic imperatives from the census and from the annual monitoring that the Department of Education undertake, and you have to factor in the flavour of a vote at 16, which was recently pronounced.
Hmm. Hmm.
All of those factors lead any constructive analyst to be persuaded that the balance will have tipped irrevocably in and around 2030. It may tip late 2029. Society might not get its head round the inevitability of it until
Hmm.
2031, but in and around that ballpark,
Yeah.
we consider that it would no longer be legally feasible not
Okay.
to convene a border poll,
Hmm.
and in
Okay.
fact, it would be constitutionally irresistible, i.e., it must be convened.
Hmm. Pat, do you want to?
But now, what's that based on? I was listening to, and I've been at a couple of your SSE things, and so are your and the in Belfast day. And one thing that's always strikes me, you guys forward a very articulate and well thought out, but the Irish government isn't really playing ball that much. Micheál Martin has gone for this shared Ireland, and he's run away big time from what you're proposing. And I don't know. Whereas Brexit seems to have really pushed it in the north, Micheál Martin seems to want to dampen it down big time in the south. What's your view of that?
I think that's a fair analysis, Pat. Um, we we are, disappointed that there has not been more enthusiasm from, the Irish government in terms of um, setting out a very public, pronounced position as to what the Irish government is prepared to do.
Mm.
We respectfully suggested that there should be a dedicated ministry staffed by a dedicated supporting civil service, with various papers to be presented to the Oireachtas for debate and refined analysis. That's how it should occur within the democratic system. Micheál Martin's approach has been to favour the shared island approach, and I have to say, the shared island initiative is constructive. It is welcome, but it does not represent what we expect a sovereign party to constitutional change to be doing at this moment in time.
Do you think can it be done? Sorry, Niall. Do you think it can be done without the governments? I mean,
no.
The governments surely have to be at the centre of it.
Well, very, very fundamentally, it can't happen without the democratic expression of the people. So that's the first and last barometer. But in terms of preparing responsibly, we've seen how reckless constitutional change has been effected in England, Scotland, and Wales through the Brexit debate, which was the opposite of how we want to conduct our affairs on this island. Brexit was a debate devoid of facts or empirical evidence, and was infused with, regretfully, racism and jingoism. We've seen how not to do constitutional change, so that's why we in Ireland's future have, collectively, individually and collectively, reflected on our own, various positions in life.
Well,
And what experience we can bring.
myself and Jude have discussed this on many occasions, but one of the things I've never understood, why the reluctance of the Southern government to hold citizens' assembly. I think you're a big in favour of that big time. Why are they refusing point blank to, surely there should be one in Donegal, one in Galway, one in Cork, one in Kerry, or wherever the hell it is, and saying, right, what does uh, Irish unity mean to you? What are the nuts and bolts? Should we have a default system? Should we have a federal system? Should we, get all intellectuals, academics, politicians, everything, you know, why the reluctance to get the ordinary people of the, pardon that term, involved?
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not really my position to second guess or attempt to answer that. I think there's an ingrained reticence within some of the established political structures in the South that have an antithesis towards reunification, and I don't think that ingrained antithesis is reflective of where the populace is at. I would be very confident that there would be a strong appetite in the southern jurisdiction to want to know more about the mechanics of reunification. I think that it's a warm glow that resides in the vast majority of Irish people, an aspiration towards reunification. And I don't think that is being reflected or well served by the body politic. And that's ultimately, it's going to have to come from the grassroots up. And that's why we take our initiatives very seriously.
So do you see the pressure from the grassroots up being sufficient at some point so that the governments will feel they have to be involved? Because, for example, if you think of the Good Friday Agreement, you couldn't have had the Good Friday Agreement if you didn't have the governments involved. The same surely would apply to this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also infer that the main political parties in the South conduct their own private polling, and I would estimate that they know privately that this is an important issue, and that it's an issue that is favourable to the electorate. And I would take that inference from the more strident positive approach that has been adopted by Fine Gael, for example. And it would be the brave political analyst from 20 years ago to forecast that Fine Gael would have been more pronounced on Irish reunification than Fianna Fáil were, but here we are. That's a matter of fact.
Well, that's seen most in Leo Varadkar, but he only
And
became
Simon
very
Coveney
clear
as
on it
well.
when he left
Yeah.
office. We've talked, as Pat said, we've talked about this
That could
before.
be slightly unfair to Varadkar. You know, he was warm whilst Taoiseach did speak and respond to, public correspondence that we sent to him.
Uh,
Simon Coveney was
The same.
exceptional. I
so
would,
what did they say? What in essence, what was their response?
I understood. I got the sense that they had a strong appreciation that our analysis was correct. I didn't get the feeling that they were getting the persuasive support from the machinations of the civil service in the South. But I did feel that there was an understanding that this was going to be, a significant moment. All of that was, frustrated by or infused by the background acoustic of Brexit.
Mhm.
And that, of course, consumed. Simon Coveney would have spoken in terms of bandwidth, and when you think about it, the scale of Brexit as a concept to legislate for, make political agreements in respect of, was massive.
Mhm.
There were
Mhm.
so many issues
Neil, can I ask
engaged.
you a question? Why is it left to guys like you, and you've gone out of your way to stress the fact that Ireland's future is neutral, it's not aligned to any party. Why is it some left to a solicitor in Belfast, to lead the campaign? Why aren't the big figures down south leading for this? Fianna Fáil, the Republican Party, whatever. You know what? Yet the most successful, and I don't mean to be blowing smoke your way, but the people who have taken it on the agenda far more are Ireland's future. And I've been to the waterfront. I've been, I think, twice. Me and Jude were at the last one. And you had Jim O'Callaghan, I'm now a Minister for Justice, all the rest of it. Why is it left to you guys? Where are all other people?
Well, it's just part of, responsible civic activism and, debate. A lot of the people that would contribute to the work that Ireland's future do come from varying backgrounds in civic and community society and work. And it's, it was just an inevitable conclusion that we are the generation that is going to be in positions of responsibility at the time that the demographic, tectonic plates shift.
Mm.
And therefore, if it's not us, who?
Well,
If
I
it's
absolutely
not
agree
now,
with you.
when?
Yeah.
This is the moment to change. And just by virtue of our dates of birth, we are collectively of an age bracket where you have a responsibility, we feel, to, conduct something as precious as the reunification of our island, as constitutional change, appreciating the history of this place.
Mm.
We felt almost a moral responsibility
Yes.
to take forward and put it front and center, and
Mm.
allow people who might have been reticent to express a constitutional opinion to do so without the baggage that all political parties inherently bring. We wanted
Mhm.
this to be civic, people led, so that, we use the expression both, an umbrella and a platform. The people can take shelter in the collective, but also stand on the platform and pronounce their view,
Mm.
independent of any party political analysis,
It
and that's
seems
very
to
important.
it seems to me now that there's two groups that are a problem in terms of moving towards a referendum. One group are the two main parties in the south, because if the referendum, as you would hope, would be successful, it will simply shatter the Dáil from the pattern it has had for the last 100 years. And there's very few parties that want to have things shattered if they've had their hands on the reins of power for a century. The second group that will have to be looked at is, of course, the Unionists in the north. So could you say a few things or your own view on the first of all the parties in the south and the fact that they are in a way acting against their own interest if they
Well,
subscribe to a border poll, and then the Unionists.
there would be a new political dispensation. That's goes without saying. But I don't think there's been enough commentary as to how that new political dispensation might settle in terms of ideology and ideological perspectives. You could see a circumstance where centre to right parties would coalesce on, economic, social issues, and it's likely that, the broad swell of unionism would find more in common in a coalition government with, a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael coalition in a new numerical dispensation than it might on a geographical basis.
Mm-hmm.
We have government by geography at Stormont, and I've seen it described as a fourth wedding of Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage, which obviously makes things more difficult. It's more likely in a new all-island setting that you would have a more settled ideological approach. And as someone who, organically comes from the left, that might not be in our interests.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas you forecast that a change of the settled arrangement might not suit certainly interests in the South, it actually might, because there is likely to be more centre-right votes in an all-island setting than votes from the left.
Mm-hmm.
But
what about the Unionists now?
That's the democracy that we're all hoping to achieve, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what self-determination means.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In terms of unionism,
yeah.
There are certain voices within unionism that are not represented in their political expression, and that's a phenomenon that we have gladly become familiar with in the last couple of years in doing what we do. And there is a lot of sincere political thinkers who, whilst in opposition to the concept of reunification, they're not stupid, and they understand the inevitability of demography. And insofar as that's the case, there is, and there has been, private approaches in terms of how certain religious and political liberties would be safeguarded in an all-island setting, and that's to be expected. It's not finding its voice through its political representation at the minute, but I expect that would inevitably change in the event of, for example, the calling of a border poll. And there are, it's crude to, use religiosity as a diagnostic. It's not all Catholics are nationalists, and not all Protestants are unionists.
But most of them are.
There are many, people who would have grown up in the Protestant tradition of one degree or another, who are very interested in the positive aspects that reunification could bring: EU citizenship, a stronger footprint, not only in local politics but in continental and world politics, and the opportunities that brings. So I do think that unionism, and it far be it from me to speak on their behalf. They've many noble advocates in their own cause, but ultimately, when the inevitability of what is going to happen comes, you have to appreciate the unionist mindset. It's a political tradition that was born of supremacy, and that's an electoral supremacy that has been washed away in the last 4 or 5 elections to parliaments to which unionism aspires. It has lost its majority at Stormont forever. That's never, ever coming back. It has lost its majority in returns to Westminster. There are now more pro-United Ireland MPs and pro-United Kingdom MPs. That's never, ever going to change. So there are political realities, there are pennies dropping that might take a little time to settle, but an ideology born in supremacy is gone forever, because numerically the numbers are never, ever coming back. And that's a reality that informs, what we're discussing. There will be a border poll because of these political realities and demographic realities.
Now, what happens to go the opposite way to Jude? It looks like reform could be and power the next time round. if Jeremy Corbyn's new what your party takes a lot of votes for the Labour Party, but the Labour Party are nearly imploding themselves. But anyway, I was reading the last day there that Farage, if he gets into power, he wants to sort of decode from the European Court of Human Rights, and he wants to take away all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that's the sort of the mainstay of the Good Friday Agreement is the European Court of Human Rights, the guarantees, and all the rest of it. He says he wants to renegotiate the Good Friday Agreement. Sure, if he renegotiates the Good Friday or renegotiate the Good Friday Agreement, where are we then with the Good Friday Agreement? Where are we with Brexit? Where are we with the Windsor Agreement? Where are we with anything in regard to the constitutional status of Northern Ireland?
It's impossible, Nigel Farage. I'm not going to take any political advice on the Good Friday Agreement or the European Convention on Human Rights from Nigel Farage. What he is
Yeah.
discussing is a unicorn. It can't happen.
Why do you say that now?
The European Convention of Human Rights is stitched in to the Good Friday Agreement in a way
But he
that
says he wants to renegotiate the Good Friday Agreement.
it cannot be unravelled. Well, the only mechanism that I could foresee that, and this may be his long game theory, is that it can only be renegotiated after the convention of a border poll.
Yeah,
If he and that may be what he wants. He dropped the DUP before. He may
yeah, he
do
did it
so
twice.
again.
Yeah, yeah,
This Brexit and reform are about English nationalism. They want their England back. Brexit
yeah,
means
yeah. And
autonomy in
Scotland
England.
means nothing to them. Wales means nothing to them. Northern Ireland means nothing to them. But England does.
More so here, and very explicitly because the European Convention of Human Rights, it's entwined in our constitutional settlement like a
Yeah,
stick of rock. It's not
yeah,
something that you can extract from this part and the rest of it flows. It is inextricably intertwined in such a way that it is unravelable. And
How do you, sorry now, but how do you respond to the unionist who would say, look, I'm a unionist, that is, I want to maintain the present constitutional state of things as part of the UK. If we cease being part of the UK, well, what's the point in me calling myself a unionist? I've lost, so all the sweet words in the world won't change that. How do you respond to that?
well, I would respond through the experience that you have had since your date of birth, that Pat has had since his date of birth, that I have had since my date of birth. Just because partition was imposed upon our parents and grandparents didn't stop us from aspiring to uh, a 32 county Ireland. But what will be different in a new dispensation is that we will not treat any section of our society in the manner in which our community was treated for decades under Unionist misrule, and more recently, prior to devolution, under direct rule. That abuse of a community, its culture, its heritage, its language, its sport cannot, I would not want to be a part of a new constitutional arrangement that would see that as something that it wanted to do. So there will be a fundamental and inherent change from day one. And indeed, that is precisely the type of thing that should and must be debated in the planning and preparation phase, which I think we are currently in. That would be my sort of message to unionism.
Can I ask you? It's sort of a personal question, but it's not meant that way. You're in Belfast, like I'm on the other side of the border. How do people in the unionist community take an organisation like Ireland's Future? Are you seeing, a sort of Trojan horse? Do you find people are willing to discuss Irish unity, or is there a sort of deep suspicion or even detestation? I'm struggling here to find the right word, but how does the reaction? Are you people considered sort of an annoyance, or are you considered wait a minute, these guys have got a real point here?
I've been described as an annoyance and worse for different reasons, but no, I think the means by which we have conducted our affairs I think people appreciate that we are honest, sincere brokers and are very much open to listening. We have set forward our analysis on, be it the economy, health service, and education system, policing, courts, on a 32 county basis. We've been quite pronounced.
Yeah.
Rights, identity. We've been quite, clear as to where we see the spheres of debate, and I think that's appreciated. Listen, very fundamentally, there's going to be people that object to any discourse, much less sensible discourse around reunification, and that's to be expected. There's going to be a cohort of people that will, vehemently oppose and even detest any such conversation, but it's past that now.
Mm.
The kettle's boiling and the steam's coming out, and
Good
it's just
analogy.
an inevitability that we all need to come to terms with to
So
make sure
where
that,
do you go next? Where do you go next?
well, we're going to continue doing what we're doing. We had a very enthusiastic and eventful summer. We're now in a position where we feel quite, lucky and proud to be invited to contribute to different fora. There were quite a few events over the summer that, I contributed to. Professor Colin Harvey has been exceptionally busy on our behalf. I know that he was at some events in Derry as well.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep undertaking that. We're probably not likely to convene an SSE 3 Arena type event in the coming months or calendar year. It's more likely that we will continue to make ourselves available for, public discussions like this, in-person events, and it's likely that we will continue to produce literature and have launch events. But we're very busy. Don't worry about that.
Mm.
Niall, would you see by 2030 that you and others with you would have produced a kind of a model as to how you see this new Ireland? Or would you? I talked to Brendan O'Leary, and I think he suggested at one stage the notion of two referenda, one where people suggested no, and then after that they made decisions about what kind of unitary state they might want.
Yeah,
Do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah. That's the type of minutiae that needs to be worked out. And Brendan has been, prolific in his publications and public discourse, and he sets out, a very well reasoned mechanism by which that might happen. There are others who consider that the mechanism envisaged by the Good Friday Agreement is singularly simple and enough. What we all need to understand and appreciate, and again, this will come from wider conversation, which will intensify as the years close in. It's not going to be a day one change, black and white. It's going to be evolutionary, and things are going to change. I wouldn't say incrementally, but just by their nature. You can't geld a new health system from day one. It's going to take time to evolve and for the different, bureaucratic synapses to reconnect. But, this island has managed to mutilate itself through partition. And I think that the healing process of reunification, given the enthusiasm which will envelop it, will be much easier and more enthusiastically achieved
You
than the
know,
mutilation
Niall,
of country.
Dr. Cormac Moore had a book there. It's called "The Root of All Evil," and he said that
Yeah,
when the Boundary Commission was set up, there was a fatal flaw. I think it was called Article 12, if I remember correctly, where the chairman, where there was a representative from the south, a representative from the north, and a British chairman who had the casting vote. he said it was one of the stupidest. Well, he didn't. I'm paraphrasing and I'm putting words in his mouth, but it's one of the stupidest things because the weight all went on the Unionists and the British side. Uh, According to the Good Friday Agreement, uh, a referendum or a border poll will be called when the Secretary of State he decides. By the way, he will leave out the pronoun. But does that not is that not a sort of a dodgy one as well? Did we not learn from history about giving the Brits power to make decisions when it comes to Ireland?
Yeah, I think that was Owen McNeill who was the
Owen McNeill, yeah,
Irish
yeah,
representative on the Border Commission.
mm,
And it was a post that he wasn't qualified to do.
yeah.
And that's something that, you know, historically we need to learn from. But in terms of the specifics of
But
the
the
Good
point I'm
Friday
getting at
Agreement,
now, could the Secretary of State keep putting it back, putting it back, putting it back? That's really what I'm getting at.
in
You seem to
legal
suggest
terms,
no, he couldn't.
the Good Friday Agreement is legislatively expressed by the Northern Ireland Act 1998, and it's Schedule 1 of that Act, which provides for a border poll. There is no specificity as to what the metrics are that would compel a Secretary of State to convene a border poll. So we don't know, is it electoral results? Because if it is, well, it's been met now. We don't
Yeah,
know if it's demographics, because if it is, the next census of 2031 will report that. If the 2021 census has not been authoritative enough, I think a junior NIO minister, and I don't know if she was flying a kite on purpose, but she referenced opinion polls. And even when you look at, there's a poll of polls which puts them all together. You know, the trajectories
yeah,
are in one way. So I think by any metric, be it electoral results, demographic change, or opinion polls, 2030, it's likely, in our view, to be the tipping point. And if a Secretary of State attempted to resist its position, I would expect, and it would need to be a challenge that's well thought out, and a solo run, and would need to be strategic. I think that there would be an obvious challenge in the
legally.
courts.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're sorry, Pat, we're nearly out of time here. I just ask one brief last question. Um, do you what is your greatest fear with regard to this whole project now?
No, I don't have any fears. I think it is just opportunity, optimism, and we're the people that are lucky to be alive to have an opportunity to shape this. I think our quirk of history and being the generation that's going to usher in a united Ireland is one that we should all be just mindful how lucky we are to be in this position.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it's we get one chance to do this properly.
Okay.
And I'm very confident that once the vote goes as we consider it will be inevitable, that the opportunity, look at the state that
Okay.
Britain is in presently.
Okay.
The
I'm just
opportunity
looking
to
at the
look after
clock
our
here. We're going
affairs.
to be cut off now. Listen,
No
thank you
problem.
very much for your time, and that's been very informative. And we'll put it up onto YouTube, and you can have a look at it. Okay,
Thanks,
thanks
Thank
Niall.
you.
again. Thanks, Niall.